America is shifting in silence, entire states emptying out, new ones exploding overnight. And in this year, this quiet exodus could change the country forever. Over the past few years, something has been building quietly beneath the surface of America. A kind of slow-motion shift that doesn't announce itself with headlines or political speeches. Yet it's visible in the empty houses, the packed U-Haul lots, and the subtle disappearance of familiar neighbors who one day simply decided they couldn't stay anymore. What's happening right now is one of the largest internal migrations the country has seen in decades, not driven by dreams of new opportunities like the great movements of the past, but by a sense of necessity and a growing feeling that the cost of staying in certain parts of the country has become too high emotionally, financially, and mentally. People are not moving because they want to chase a fantasy of something better. They're moving because the place they once called home no longer fits the life they can realistically afford. You can see it in families who once felt secure now, questioning whether they can get through another year in the same city, and in young couples realizing they may never own a home if they don't leave the state they grew up in. This shift is happening silently, without the dramatic downsizing announcements or massive factory closures that once defined American migration. But it's far more widespread, and it's reshaping the country faster than anyone expected. Across the nation, middle-class families who once felt stable in their routines are suddenly calculating the financial weight of simply existing where they live. The rising rent is no longer a surprise, it's an inevitability. Groceries that used to take up a corner of a paycheck now swallow a frightening portion of it. Utility bills jump without warning, insurance premiums skyrocket, and property taxes climb year after year until retirees find themselves pushed into the same financial pressure that younger workers feel. For many, the city or state they live in hasn't just become expensive, it has become unsustainable. The emotional toll builds slowly, first as frustration, then as stress, and eventually as a quiet resignation that the life they imagined in that place is slipping away. People tell themselves that things will calm down, that prices will ease, that next year won't be as bad. But each year, the reality only gets heavier, and for many, this year feels like the year where decisions can no longer be postponed. When necessity becomes louder than hope, movement begins. And it's not just individuals or families feeling squeezed. Entire neighborhoods are starting to reflect this slow exodus. Streets that once buzzed with familiar faces now have "for sale" signs sitting longer, or homes occupied by new families who arrived with the same story. The search for a place where living doesn't feel like constant financial combat. Community gatherings grow smaller. Longtime neighbors talk about moving maybe in a year or two, with the same casual tone people used to talk about vacations. There's a quiet, collective understanding spreading through communities that staying put might no longer be the sensible choice. This shift isn't being pushed by one major economic collapse or one catastrophic event. It's being pushed by the relentless weight of day-to-day living costs, slowly crushing the stability out of millions of middle-class lives. What makes this moment feel different is how widespread it is. It's not limited to one coast or one region. It's not tied to a specific political ideology or age group. People in their 20s and people in their 70s are both confronting the realization that their city's cost of living now demands more than they can give. Teachers, nurses, food service workers, freelancers, tech employees, people in every income bracket are rethinking where they can realistically build a future. The idea of uprooting your entire life used to feel extreme, something done only in moments of crisis or opportunity, but now it's becoming a logical calculation. People are comparing rent prices across states the same way they used to compare brands at the grocery store. They're studying property tax charts, insurance rates, school rankings, and job markets, and discovering that an entirely different version of life exists just a few states away. Behind all this movement is an emotional reality that rarely gets talked about: the fear of being trapped in a place you can no longer afford. That fear fuels late-night conversations at kitchen tables, quiet budgeting sessions that end in frustration, and long drives where someone thinks about what their life might look like somewhere else. The pressure isn't just about money, it's about dignity, stability, and the desire to live without constant anxiety about tomorrow's bills. When people feel they are being forced into survival mode in the very places they once felt proud to belong to, the idea of leaving begins to feel less like abandoning a home and more like choosing a future. This is why 2025 is shaping up to be a turning point. The pressures that have been building for the past several years are converging, and millions of Americans are reaching the same conclusion at the same time. If they don't move now, things might only get harder. It's not just a trend, it's a quiet crisis. And as this silent movement grows, it's slowly redrawing the entire map of the United States, reshaping not just where people live, but what they believe is possible for their own lives. The story of America has always been about movement, but this time, the movement is fueled not by excitement, but by survival. Across the country, certain states that once symbolized opportunity, culture, and ambition are now watching their population drip away year after year. What makes this moment striking is how predictable the pattern has become. The same states keep appearing at the top of the outbound lists. The same major cities keep losing residents, and the same reasons keep driving people out. California, New York, Illinois, New Jersey, Oregon, and even parts of Washington are no longer the magnets they once were. Instead, they've become places where everyday living has turned into a constant negotiation with rising expenses, higher taxes, and a quality of life that feels increasingly out of balance with the price people are paying. You can feel the shift when you talk to residents who once swore they would never leave, people who loved the energy of Los Angeles, the excitement of New York City, the brainpower of Seattle, or the charm of Chicago. Now, those same people talk about leaving with a sense of exhaustion rather than regret, like they're escaping a burden rather than abandoning a dream. The biggest driver behind this mass departure is the simplest: affordability has broken. Rent has climbed to levels that would have seemed impossible 10 years ago, making it hard for anyone without a six-figure salary to feel secure. A two-bedroom apartment in many big cities now costs more than a mortgage in another state. Groceries that already feel overpriced in much of America are even higher in these states, while utilities, transportation, childcare, and health insurance stack up until even middle-income households feel squeezed. When everyday expenses reach a point where you feel like you're working just to keep your life from falling apart, something inside people shifts. They stop seeing their city as a place they're proud to belong to, and start seeing it as a place that's holding them back. That emotional shift is one of the strongest forces pushing people out. California is the most familiar example. Sunshine, beaches, and tech dreams can't hide the staggering housing prices anymore. Families who have lived in the same neighborhood for generations now find themselves priced out as investors buy up properties, rents soar, and taxes rise. Young workers who moved to Los Angeles or San Francisco for opportunities now run the numbers and realize they could live twice as comfortably somewhere else. Even high earners feel the pressure of state income taxes, skyrocketing insurance rates, and a lifestyle that demands constant financial juggling. Add in traffic chaos, concerns about crime in major cities, and the visible homelessness crisis, and it becomes clearer why more people are choosing to leave than stay. New York is not far behind. For decades, the city sold itself as the place where dreams were possible, where the energy made the high cost worth it. But in recent years, costs climbed faster than incomes, and many people began to question what they were getting in return. Rent increases push people farther from the city center. Transportation issues make commutes unpredictable, and taxes take a heavy bite out of every paycheck. Even the state's suburbs, once seen as safe havens from the city's pressure, have become expensive to maintain. For many longtime residents, the math simply no longer works, and the decision to move becomes less about desire and more about survival. Illinois and New Jersey tell similar stories, though in different ways. Residents often cite property taxes that are among the highest in the nation, combined with aging infrastructure and declining services. People feel like they're paying more each year while getting less in return. It creates a slow-building frustration that eventually spills into the decision to leave. Chicago's challenges with crime and financial instability push some families to seek safer, more predictable communities elsewhere. In New Jersey, where the cost of maintaining a home can feel like a financial marathon, retirees and middle-class families alike are choosing to relocate to states where their income stretches further. Even the once booming Pacific Northwest has started to see people quietly slip away. Cities like Portland and Seattle, once praised for their quality of life, have struggled with rising housing prices, homelessness, and concerns about safety. For many residents, the region feels like it changed faster than they could adapt, and the cost of staying has begun to outweigh the charm that first pulled people in. It's important to understand that people aren't leaving these states because they hate them. Many departures are filled with sadness, nostalgia, and an understanding that these places still have great beauty and opportunity. But emotional attachment doesn't pay the rent. And as life becomes more unpredictable, people are choosing stability over sentiment. They're choosing a future where their money lasts longer, their stress is lower, and their time isn't consumed by the constant pressure of keeping up. The states losing the most residents today aren't failing in every way. They're failing in the one way that matters most for ordinary people. They've stopped being livable for the middle class. And so, families pack their belongings into trucks. Young professionals cancel their leases, and retirees sell homes they've lived in for decades. Each person leaving carries their own story, but together they form a pattern too big to ignore. The great outbound migration isn't slowing, it's accelerating. And with every person who leaves, a clear message is being sent. When the cost of staying becomes greater than the cost of starting over, people will choose to start over. While some states are watching people pour out, others are witnessing the opposite. An almost non-stop stream of newcomers arriving with moving trucks, packed cars, and a sense of relief that life might finally feel manageable again. States like Texas, Florida, Tennessee, Arizona, Idaho, North Carolina, and Utah have become the new landing spots for Americans searching for breathing room. These places offer something that feels increasingly rare in the country's most expensive regions: a chance to build a stable life without every dollar being squeezed. For many people, the move is less about chasing a dream and more about reclaiming a sense of sanity. When you've lived for years in a place where rent eats half your income or more, arriving somewhere with lower costs feels like stepping into a different version of America, one where your paycheck doesn't disappear the moment it arrives. In these fast-growing states, the first thing newcomers often talk about is housing. That's the anchor of this migration surge. While the cheapest parts of California or New York can feel impossibly expensive, many cities in Texas, Tennessee, or North Carolina still offer homes at prices that seem unreal in comparison. A family that could barely afford a cramped apartment in Los Angeles suddenly finds they can buy a 3-bedroom house in the suburbs of Dallas or Nashville. Even with rising prices in some of these inbound areas, the gap remains dramatic enough that people feel like they've regained control over their future. And because so many of these states have looser building regulations and more available land, developers can keep constructing new homes, which helps slow the kind of runaway pricing that crushed affordability in other regions. Another major attraction is the overall lifestyle shift. The day-to-day cost of living, from groceries to gas to insurance, still feels more manageable. People talk about how their stress levels drop within weeks of moving. There's space to breathe, shorter commutes, and communities that still feel grounded. In cities like Raleigh, Boise, Tampa, Austin, or Salt Lake City, newcomers describe a sense of optimism that is increasingly hard to find in the big coastal cities they left behind. These places are growing quickly, but they haven't yet reached the point where everyday life feels overwhelming. Instead, many of them have that feeling of a place on the rise, where opportunity is expanding, not shrinking. Job growth is another factor pushing people toward these states. Tech workers who once flocked to Silicon Valley are now finding remote or hybrid jobs that allow them to live anywhere, so they pick places where their money stretches farther. Retirees head to Florida or Arizona for lower taxes and warmer weather. Young families choose Tennessee or North Carolina because the mix of affordability, safety, and job markets creates a sense of balance they couldn't find elsewhere. Even small business owners are moving, drawn by lower regulations, cheaper commercial rents, and communities that support local entrepreneurship. But this massive inbound wave comes with its own challenges. The very fact that so many people are arriving has created growing pains in these states. Traffic is increasing in cities that were never designed for millions of extra residents. Schools struggle to expand fast enough. Housing prices, while still more affordable than the major coastal states, are rising quickly because demand is exploding faster than developers can build. Locals in places like Idaho and Texas sometimes feel pushed out of their own neighborhoods as wealthier transplants arrive. And the tension between newcomers and longtime residents is becoming a subtle but real part of daily life. Still, despite these challenges, the draw remains strong. People are willing to accept growing pains if the core of their life feels more secure than before. For many Americans, these inbound states represent a version of the country that still works. A place where the middle class hasn't been fully priced out, where starting over feels possible. And as more people arrive each year, these states are transforming rapidly, turning once quiet cities into major new population hubs that will shape the future of the country. As millions of Americans leave one set of states for another, the country is undergoing a quiet chain reaction that almost no one is fully prepared for. Migration on this scale doesn't just move people. It shifts economies, changes communities, and slowly rewrites the balance of power across the entire map. The states losing the most residents are starting to feel the consequences in ways that show up not just in headlines, but in everyday life. When large numbers of people leave a place, the first thing that shrinks is the tax base. Fewer people paying into the system means less money for schools, infrastructure, public services, and city maintenance. What was once manageable becomes strained, and governments begin searching for revenue wherever they can find it. In many of these outbound states, this means rising taxes, higher fees, and deeper cuts to essential services. And when taxes go up while services go down, more people begin to question why they should stay. It creates a cycle that feeds itself. People leave because things feel worse, and things feel worse because people leave. For cities already struggling with financial and social pressures, this migration only intensifies existing cracks. Major metropolitan areas that used to thrive on dense populations now face empty office buildings, declining ridership on public transit, and retail districts that no longer fill up the way they once did. Small businesses that depended on day-to-day foot traffic feel the absence immediately. Schools in some neighborhoods see enrollment drop as families move out, while other schools in inbound states overflow with new students they aren't equipped to handle. Local governments try to adjust, but the speed of the shift makes it difficult. You can't shrink a city fast enough to match the population loss without cutting into the very services that make living there worthwhile. This is how decline quietly sets in, not with a sudden collapse, but with a slow erosion that residents begin to notice in the quality of their streets, the delays in city services, the emptier public spaces, and the growing sense that the city is not the same place it used to be. Meanwhile, the states gaining residents are experiencing the opposite kind of strain. While growth brings opportunity, it also brings pressure. Cities like Austin, Raleigh, Phoenix, Tampa, and Boise have seen their populations explode so quickly that their infrastructure is struggling to keep up. Roads that used to feel spacious are now congested every morning. Suburbs that were once quiet have construction noise echoing from every direction. Schools rush to add classrooms or temporary buildings just to keep up with the flood of new students. Water systems, power grids, hospitals, and emergency services, all of them face demand that arrived far faster than planners expected. The feeling many locals have is that their once simple communities are being transformed overnight, and not always in ways that benefit the people who lived there long before the wave of newcomers arrived. This shift also affects housing in ways that catch both regions by surprise. In the states people are leaving, home values begin to soften. In some neighborhoods, houses sit on the market longer, and sellers lower their expectations. Meanwhile, inbound states experience the opposite. Prices climb sharply as demand surges. People who moved to Texas or Florida, hoping for affordability, now see houses that used to cost $250,000 suddenly listing for $400,000 or more. Renters arriving in places like Nashville or Boise find themselves competing in bidding wars that never existed before. In a strange twist, some of these once affordable states are now developing their own affordability problems, pushed not by local demand, but by the sheer number of newcomers arriving with bigger budgets from the states they left behind. The cultural impact might be even deeper than the economic one. When large populations move across the country, they bring their habits, expectations, and values with them. Cities in Idaho, Texas, and Tennessee now have neighborhoods filled with people from California, Oregon, and New York. This blending creates both excitement and friction. Longtime locals sometimes feel their identity slipping away, as the traditions and pace of life they grew up with are replaced by new ideas and different lifestyles. Newcomers, on the other hand, often expect the conveniences, services, and experiences they were used to in bigger coastal cities. Some communities embrace the mix. Others resist it. Either way, it reshapes the cultural fabric of entire regions. What's happening right now is more than people moving from one place to another. It's a reshuffling of how the country functions, who holds influence, where economic power sits, and what the future layout of America could look like. And this chain reaction is still in its early stages. The full impact hasn't arrived yet, but the first signs are already here, and they're growing harder to ignore. If the Great American Migration continues at its current pace, 2025 could mark the moment when the entire country begins to look and feel different. What started as individual families quietly choosing more affordable places may soon transform into a nationwide reshuffling that changes everything from housing markets to politics to the soul of communities. You can already see the early signs. Neighborhoods that were once full of longtime residents now sit half-empty. Suburbs in fast-growing states are swelling to sizes no one expected a decade ago. And as people continue to leave certain regions in record numbers, the ripple effects will only intensify. If millions more decide that leaving is not just an option but a necessity, the divide between affordable America and unaffordable America will become even sharper, carving the country into two distinct realities. In states losing population, the impact could turn more visible and more urgent. Entire neighborhoods may experience a slow fade As more houses go up for sale, fewer businesses survive, and tax revenue drops to levels that make it impossible to maintain city services. You could see more school closures, delayed infrastructure repairs, and downtown districts with more vacant storefronts than active ones. Even places that once prided themselves on their booming culture and economic strength might face a future where maintaining basic public services becomes a struggle. When a large number of people leave, the cost of keeping a city functioning doesn't simply shrink alongside them. Many expenses stay the same while the number of people paying into the system declines. That imbalance can turn into a downward spiral that accelerates year after year. By 2025, some of these states could face tough choices about what they can realistically support and what they will have to abandon. On the other side of the migration wave, states gaining the most people will feel a different kind of pressure. Growth can be exciting, but it's rarely smooth. Rapid population surges demand more housing, more schools, more hospitals, more roads, and more workers to keep expanding cities running. The challenge is that growth is happening faster than preparation. By 2025, cities like Austin, Tampa, Raleigh, Phoenix, and Denver may face intense strain on their infrastructure. Traffic could double in areas that once felt comfortably quiet. Emergency rooms could become more crowded. Renters might find themselves priced out by bidding wars sparked by the constant arrival of newcomers. And long-time residents may feel the stress of watching their once affordable hometowns grow more expensive by the year, pushed upward by people coming from wealthier coastal cities. Housing markets across the country could enter a new phase entirely. Outbound states might see price declines that surprise even experts, especially in neighborhoods where demand has evaporated. Inbound states could see the opposite: continued spikes driven by demand that builders can't keep up with. If millions more choose to move in 2025, what's considered affordable America could shift again, pushing people deeper into smaller cities, rural areas, and emerging suburbs that aren't yet prepared for the rapid growth. This could create a domino effect in regions that were never meant to absorb such large populations so quickly. What feels like stability today in some of these inbound states may begin to crack under the weight of fast-paced development. Beyond the money and the housing, there's a deeper transformation happening, one that affects the identity of entire regions. When large groups of people move across the country, they bring their expectations, habits, and cultural values with them. This reshapes communities in ways that can't be measured by population charts. Some states may become more politically influential, while others lose representation. New economic hubs may emerge in places that used to be quiet or overlooked. Entire industries may relocate, following the workforce to where life is more affordable. And many cities could find themselves reinventing their identity, either by adapting to the new population realities or fading into a quieter, less prominent role. If 2025 becomes the year this movement reaches full force, America could see a future where migration isn't just a response to economic pressure. It becomes a permanent part of life for millions. People may begin to move more frequently, chasing affordability, stability, or simply the chance to live in a place where their money goes further. The American map will continue shifting, and the definition of a livable city may be rewritten entirely. What's unfolding now is not just a migration, it's a rebalancing of the country. And the most important question is the one no one has fully answered yet. What happens to a nation when its people are no longer moving for opportunity, but moving simply to survive?